So let's talk about that actually. Before you were diagnosed, did you always feel that you were different?
Absolutely. I always say that I felt just outside of everyone else, like I never belonged, like there was something missing, like I just never belonged with everybody else. Like I was different in a way that I knew I was smart, but I knew that socially I just didn't fit in.
Hmm. Do you have any siblings that you grew up with?
Only child.
Got it. Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Sometimes lonely when you're growing up on the spectrum. So,
Hmm. So you grew up in the 80s and 90s, right?
yeah, I was born in 77, so mostly 80s and early 90s, I would say.
Okay. What was school like for you then?
It was difficult because the teachers didn't understand me. The administrators didn't understand me. They thought that I was a problem. One of the school social workers told my mother to throw me away and forget about me, that I would never even graduate high school, and now I'm a lawyer. So I knew that I was more capable than the school gave me credit for.
How did your mom respond when they would tell her that?
She knew they were wrong and she didn't listen to them. And she was always been my biggest champion and believed in me even when others did not.
Hmm. What kinds of services did you receive at school? You weren't diagnosed, right? But you were still in special ed.
They put me in special ed. They didn't know what to do with me, so they ended up putting me in programs for kids who were like juvenile delinquents and for kids who were problem kids. They didn't know what to do. I was bullied a lot, so they put me in like outplacements that were not appropriate for me. And so I never got real services, as I always say. I never got the education I should have, but I was able to catch myself up when I went to college and fill in the gaps on my own. And so when I got to college, I kind of was self-directed to do that.
Hmm. Did you have any friends growing up?
I had one friend and we became friends when I was about 11, 12, and so was he. He was 5 days younger than me. And the same social worker who told my mother to throw me away and that I wouldn't graduate high school violated his confidence, told the whole class something secretive, and he never trusted adults again. They sent him back to public school and said he was fine. He was well adjusted. The day before his 16th birthday, he committed suicide. And so I always say they failed me, but they failed him worse.
Wow.
And so that had a profound impact on me, showing how badly the system was broken.
How did you deal with your friend's death at the time?
At the time, I was so young, I didn't really understand how to deal with emotions about that stuff. And for some reason, internally, I hate saying this, I was never fully surprised. There was always something about him. As my mother even still says to this day, there was always something about him that you knew something was a little off and that it wasn't a total shock in certain ways. I just moved on with my life, so to speak. 2 years later, I went to college, and I kind of got my life started when I went to college, if that makes sense. The first 18 years of my life, I don't feel like my life was really started.
I see. And you said that your friend's death had a profound impact on you.
It did, in the sense, not making me depressed, which is unfortunate to say in a certain way, but it had the impact and it motivated me to make the system better for kids like me and him.
Hmm.
And years later, I looked up the social worker who had failed us both to tell him how wrong he was, but unfortunately found his obituary. He had died of cancer a few years before that, so I didn't get the opportunity to say anything to him.
Mm. What would you have said?
You failed me, but you failed him more. And to say, maybe you should have been more attentive to your job and who people were. And with him in particular, maybe you should have kept his confidence. My mother believes he was always planned to kill himself since he was a child from things we heard back then. But I do believe that the social worker violating his confidence to the entire class made him not trust adults.
Mm-hmm. Have you been able to make meaningful friendships since then?
Yeah, yes. As an adult, I have a lot of wonderful friends, some on the spectrum, some not. Some people who have turned out to be disappointments, but some people who have continued to exceed my expectations and been amazing friends.
What have you learned about social skills and friendship over the years?
Well, it's interesting because I'm one of those people who I always say, and some autistic people don't like this, I feel half on the spectrum and half not, because so many people will say, I don't seem autistic. I'm very natural in a social situation. So I feel like I kind of am too autistic for the typical world and too typical for the autistic world. And so I have a couple of friends who are in the same boat, which I think helps. But what I've learned is part of friendship is just, it's not a ledger game. It's not I did X for you, you owe me Y. It's, give and take, but you don't have to keep score on who owes who.
You've been watching Autism Knows No Borders. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Also, we'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think in the comments section. Click here to watch this interview in its entirety. You can also find us on your favorite podcast app. Tune in each week for engaging conversations of how people across the globe are inspiring change and building community. Thanks for watching. Take care.